hope is that this diary will be helpful to others so that they can observe how this process unfolds, how taking mushrooms are integrated into our day-to-day, and that it's an inner discipline of aligning one's mind with the goals. There's little magic in the process. It reminds me of working with a shrink through issues, digging up lost feelings and thoughts and trying to be fearless, open and honest with the self. We're told to prepare ourselves for the medication. For me, I want to come to Mother Goddess as if newly bathed. Maybe if you think like an indigenous American and how he approaches a horse. First, he gives it food, he strokes it, he speaks softly to it. He takes his time. He becomes friends with the horse. And eventually the horse allows the man to mount the horse and ride it. July 19th. The lethargy has lessened, but I still struggle. I've been having the exact same dream every night for weeks, maybe months. Is that weird or what? I'm in San Francisco or London, two places where I lived and loved. And my plane leaves for home at midnight. I'm trying to pack to get to the airport on time, but every time I start to pack, I'm met with more stuff to pack. And then somebody comes over and tells me that we have to go to a poetry reading or some other event. By the time I get back, it's too late. I miss the plane again, and sometimes I wake up just completely soaked. A friend says it could be regret about having missed opportunities in life, but that's hard to accept because aside from not getting a degree, I don't have a lot of regrets, and I'm pretty happy about the way my life has gone. My husband says it might be about procrastination, and maybe he's right. July 27th. Today I meet up with a San Francisco Psilocybin group. It goes wonderfully. It's hosted by a nurse and a professor. The nurse has gone to Latin America and spends months with native people who have been doing mushrooms for generations. I notice, like in the documentaries, that everybody has a smile on their face. The talk covers our own expectations and a lot of discussion about the plant emerges. This is where I walk away from the concept of respecting the medication. And as I said before, understanding how to use it, entering into the experiment with your own plan of what you want to get out of it, and to do the mental preparation. The more I learn about the mushroom, the more respect I have for it. I watched 2 documentaries called Amazing Fungi and Changing Your Mind. It just seems like my mind is being blown away almost every day. The more I learn about the mushroom, the more respect I have for it. So when you see a mushroom growing out of a log, it looks like a very quiet, standalone organism. But it's actually the above-ground sporing fruit belonging to the fungus. The fungus is connected to the large organism by a root network called mycelium. This mycelium sends messages throughout the forest by electrical impulses and informs trees and flora fauna of changes in the weather, the availability of water, and probably oncoming fire. Scientists are reinterpreting the concept of intelligent life to include this type of conscious communication. I find a video that has a recording, and it occurs to me that they may also communicate via sound, not just the mycelium. It's a sound that we can hear only through sensitive equipment. I have to wonder whether underground animals, like a mole with no eyes and giant ears, can hear the mushrooms. Do mushrooms talk not only to flora, but to fauna as well? Evidence of the existence of mushrooms takes us back 1 billion years. But that's only the hard evidence. Finding fossilized imprints of fungi is extremely rare. We don't really know how far back they go. One thing that I find strange in the jargon is they talk about the death of the ego. I notice that elicits strong feelings from different people because nobody wants their ego to die. And for that reason, I prefer to say the release of the ego. It's more in the line of a rebirth. Mushrooms release the ego by employing the whole cerebral cortex. When you look at a brain scan of someone on psilocybin, that whole area is completely lit up. And if you think of the ego as an embattled child who, in order to survive, has built walls to defend itself, we should be able to break out of the psychological walls that keep us from evolving or breaking free from old wounds, from childhood trauma, from trauma that occurs in adulthood, such as domestic abuse, war, or deep loss and betrayal, things that affect humans deeply. The overwhelming experience on a good trip is that people feel a deep connection to life around them, trees, earth, animals, in short, nature. The ego experiences the depth of its kinship to the earth and, in turn, the universe. Doesn't it seem magical that the mushroom gives us the root of its own existence? So we experience a rebirth and connectivity to our 4.5 billion-year-old Earth. The more you take of the psilocybin, the bigger and broader the connection becomes until you've reached this atomic and galactical level at the same time. I don't know if I need that much of a breakdown or joining with my brother, the universe. It still scares me a little bit. August 1st. I go to San Diego today and meet with the two short film people. I'll call them Sam and John. Sam is the actor and John is the cinematographer. It's about gauging our compatibility. We hit it off. We talk about everything under the sun, all around the concept of art, of creativity, of working together. We draw up the storyline of this 5-minute film. And it's kind of poetry, the way it works together. We're bouncing ideas off each other. We seem to work seamlessly. Maybe this will actually happen. August 4th. I decide to take a whole gram of psilocybin, but it does little more than intensify colors. It soon subsides and I drive home. But the 30-minute drive goes quickly and feels unusually smooth. It's a lovely sensation. I never drive when I smoke cannabis. It makes me paranoid and triples my fear of semi-trucks. My dog is in the back seat. Her coat has a greater sheen to it than I've ever noticed. I don't especially like to drive, but today I'm more comfortable with it than I ever am. August 7th. I take a microdose today at noon before sitting down to do this podcast. Yesterday, I wrote the outline of the plot of the 5-minute film. Its working title is 3 Cigarettes. Each cigarette is a separate story. What happens to the second cigarette was unknown to me, and even though I asked different people for their ideas, they just went completely off course. But once I sit down, once I do the discipline and stop looking for the inspiration, it comes. The second cigarette event unfolds like a flower. I shoot it off to Sam and John to wait for their comments. In another half hour, I'm off to Sharon's house to teach her how to use Audacity. That's the editing software that creates these podcasts. I need her to learn this so she can do her own interviews, and rather than me editing all of them, which is a lot of work. August 10th, I took 3/10 in the morning of psilocybin as suggested by one of the speakers in the meetup I attended. I was outside cleaning up the patio and making a few improvements, and after 2 hours I realized the hues around me were unusually saturated. That was the extent of the high. The patio looks great. After microdosing for the past 32 days, I can definitely say my mood is better. I feel more energy in starting and completing tasks and projects. I can't say that I am any more tolerant or patient than before, which could mean going off Lexapro, which I started taking less and less, is one reason. But I suspect that there is no magic way of losing undesirable traits, even with psilocybin. But I continue to work on it. Eventually, I will take what's called a heroic dose in order to experience the release of the ego and submerge myself in the connectivity of the earth. This concludes part 2 of driving on psilocybin. Thank you to Michael Allen Z for his recording of mushrooms. In this case, it was shiitake mushrooms. And thank you to FreeSX for music and sound effects. If you enjoyed this recording, please retweet, like, or tell a friend. It makes a huge difference for us. Thank you for listening. This is Nana on Marijuana.